Well, Kevin Groves is Head of Media Relations at Network Rail, and he joins us from London's Euston Station. Kevin, thank you so much for talking to us. So where are we with these talks?
Well, the talks are ongoing. They started about 8 o'clock this morning, and they've just had a lunch break, and we're expecting them to resume later this afternoon. So whilst there's talks ongoing, there's still a slither of hope that we can find some way through this dispute and find a compromise that works for everyone. But I have to say that sliver of hope, as the day progresses, is getting ever smaller.
And why is that? What is that down to?
Well, unfortunately, even if there was a breakthrough this afternoon, and I don't know whether that's going to happen or not, the timetable that has been set in stone now, we are beyond the point of no return for what passengers can expect from the railway in terms of services for tomorrow. So the 20% service, 50% of the network closed. People need to check before they travel and really should only use the train if they must. That is now what is going to happen tomorrow, even if white smoke does appear, and there's no indication at this point that that's going to be the case.
Okay. And what would it take for that? Can you hear me?
Sorry.
It's all right. You just sort out your earpiece. It's okay. Can you hear me? Let me know when you can.
Yeah,
okay.
carry on.
So in terms of
fine.
the white smoke, what do you think would take for that to happen?
Well, that's a good question. Obviously, the RMT have put their demands out that they want a large pay rise or something near inflation, and clearly that's at the rate of inflation at the moment. That's unaffordable. The railway finances are in, to be frank, a bit of a mess.
They're saying it's not actually at the rate of inflation.
Passenger numbers are no way.
It's not actually at the rate of inflation.
Passenger numbers on the rate of inflation when talks started, which were back at the turn of the year, so that's something like 7–8%. And that is clearly unaffordable when the railway finances are in such a mess. We've only got 75% of passengers back compared to where we were in 2019. That creates about £2,000 million shortfall in income. So that's the reality of railway finances, and it's our job to try and find and negotiate with the RMT to be pragmatic and say, look, guys, we need a deal that gives a fair rise, a fair pay rise to our colleagues and employees, but also is something that taxpayers and fare payers can afford. And it's trying to find that middle ground, which is why talks are continuing. There is some progress, small steps, but the slither of hope of a resolution is not great.
What would be a pay rise that you would accept then? If it's not the 7.1%, that's what inflation was back in December, which Mike Lynch says that's when the deal should have been made. So if 7.1% isn't acceptable for you, then what is?
Well, I'd love to sit down and discuss the negotiating strategy of Network Rail and the trade unions, but I'm not sure that's helpful for the guys in the room who'll be getting back round the table in about an hour's time. So let's leave that for them. But as far as listeners and viewers are concerned, they need to know that whether we find a way through this and find a compromise that works for everyone or not, passenger train services tomorrow will be severely affected, and people shouldn't try and travel by train tomorrow unless they must. And if they do want to travel, please check before you travel on websites to see what trains are running and what trains aren't. Trains will only start running from about 7:30 in the morning, and they'll be finished by 6:30 in the evening. So there will be a very early close down to services tomorrow evening even.
Just finally, would it be easier if the government were involved? Do you think it is time for them to step in now?
No, the government has given us a very clear mandate and framework to work from, and indeed we think that what they've given us and the ability to, if the union would compromise on the modernising the working practices that Grant just referred to in the earlier interview, gives us enough wiggle room and flexibility to deliver savings that we can pass on to our colleagues. But at the moment there's a bit of an impasse on how willing they are to move. It's a bit more take than give on the negotiating table at the moment. We just need a bit more wiggle room and compromise to find our way through.
OK. Kevin, thank you so much for talking to us.
My pleasure.